I have a crazy story for you about this guy who literally smacked his pastor and screamed at him during the service. No joke. But for the sake of privacy and me not wanting to be sued, we'll call this guy Aiden. As you listen, analyze this guy's bizarre behavior and think of a solution or solutions to fix his serious problems, and there's many of them. For starters, Aiden was unsaved and he let everybody know it. He used terrible language in church. Even during service, it was really bad, trust me. I go to a conservative church, but last week Aiden started speaking incoherently while the pastor was preaching. It wasn't very pretty. Even though he attended this church for about a year, he was not saved. Maybe he had a hard heart. I think he just has a really hard head. On top of that, he has a few terrible addictions. One of them is drinking. In fact, I remember the time he brought a bottle and drank it right in front of the pastor, but sadly, no one was surprised. Everyone thought, it's only Aiden. What caught people off guard, though, was the time he smacked our pastor right in the face. Did I mention he has a little bit of a violent temper? I heard that a few weeks ago, I wasn't there, but I heard about it, that he smacked one of the senior ladies, but I don't know if it's true, but knowing him, I could believe it. I gotta give it to my pastor though. He would tell Aiden right to his face that he needs Jesus, but Aiden did not care one bit. He would not trust Jesus no matter what the pastor told him. In fact, he even screamed out during a sermon while pastor was talking about becoming a Christian. There are so many more stories I could share with you about Aiden, but I think you got the gist. If you were the pastor, please pray for your pastors. What would you do in this situation? There are many solutions to these problems. However, just like theology, you need to know the facts and understand the context of these issues. In fact, I bet you made many assumptions about Aiden. Let's put Aiden's story in its proper context so you can see the truth for yourself. If you assume that Aiden is a grown man, you're wrong. He's not. In fact, Aiden is only a 1-year-old brat. He was unsaved because, well, he was one. He had terrible language because his grammar was bad, not because he is nasty. He would babble loudly during church, not because he was part of the new apostolic reformed movement, but because of his bad behavior due to his young age and lack of spanking. He screamed out during the sermon simply because he was a little terror, and you know his terrible addiction of drinking? He was drinking baby formula. He always drank a bottle in front of the pastor. He was incredibly violent. After all, he was 1 year old. As for smacking the old lady, it was in the church nursery because she took away his cookies. Why do you give a 1-year-old cookies? I don't know, but that's why he smacked her. He also smacked the pastor simply because the pastor was standing there. You see, without understanding the context of the story, crazy assumptions can be made. Just think of crazy doctrines you hear from TV preachers. Those doctrines come from bad theology and ripping passages out of context. As you sit and listen to pastors and teachers, notice if they biblically define the context. Also understand the context of those passages for yourself. False teachers rip passages out of context. That's how they make their living. So the next time you're listening to a sermon, when something seems kind of funky, kind of like Aiden, think of that little boy and ask yourself, is this in the right context or am I hearing heresy? Now that's theology for everyday life.